Welcome into another edition of Finding Freedom. Before we get rolling today, I want to quickly tell you about I Trust Capital. If you're someone who maybe has an old 401k that you moved into an IRA somewhere when you left a job, you just have the money sitting there. What do you do with it? Try to invest in stocks, whatever other bull crap out there. What if you could invest that money in crypto? Invest it in physical gold and silver? Well, you can do that with I Trust Capital. But with I Trust Capital, you have the tax benefits of an IRA while trading in crypto assets. And on top of that, like I said, you can also have access to buying physical gold and silver into your account. It's amazing. If you sign up using promo code LIONS at I Trust Capital, you'll get the first month free. Now, I Trust Capital is safe and secure. They are backed by Coinbase Custody and Curve to secure clients' digital assets. And they have 320 million of insurance to make sure your funds are safe and secure. On top of that, they are trusted. They have 1,300 reviews on Trustpilot, and they are 100% transparent in their fees, which, I can't really say that about all other IRA providers. Now, whether you're holding your assets long-term or you want to buy and sell with the market, I Trust Capital's IRA gives your account or provides the account the lowest transaction fees for buying Bitcoin or other digital currencies. As an I Trust client, you'll be able to log into your account, make trades 24/7, trades execute in real time, and settle in seconds. They offer more cryptocurrencies than any other crypto IRA provider out there, and they're adding more all the time. Go to itrustcapital.com, use promo code LIONS for your first month free.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
We'll get started. I want to welcome Martha Bueno to the show. And I know Martha from Twitter and her libertarian activism and, following all that stuff. And I asked for her bio. I asked her to send her bio over. And I had no idea. This is really cool. I had no idea everything else you're involved in. I'm not going to read everything here, but it's impressive. You've been involved in real estate for a very long time. You're a realtor, and you've got involved in investment properties in order to build wealth. And your entrepreneurial mindset since a very young age. At the age of 17, Martha founded Florida Genetics Center with her mother. This was followed by two successful e-tailers, VedaAmerica.com and PureFormulas.com. And in 2011, Pure Formulas was ranked the 97th among the 500 fastest growing companies in the U.S., according to Inc. magazine. Today, Pure Formulas remains one of the leading online retailers in health supplements, retailers of health supplements and organic products. So that's cool. That's something I'm very interested in and into is entrepreneurship. And I think the libertarian movement needs to shift that way. So Martha, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I was saying earlier, it's such an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, great to have you on the show finally. And, I think since this is your first time, as you know, we have 3 different shows here at Lions of Liberty, but your first time coming on any of them. So I got to give you the intro Lions of Liberty treatment. We need to hear your journey to liberty, your journey to becoming a libertarian. So let's start there. Break down how you ended up embracing these ideas.
Right. So I think I've told this story so many times. I voted for Bush the first time I could vote back in 2000. I was, 20 something, 21, 20. And I voted for him. And then we had 9/11. And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't what, it wasn't so much 9/11. Obviously, I didn't think it was Bush's fault. But then the aftermath, I couldn't make sense of where we were going. Why, if the people on the planes were Saudis, why we were going into Afghanistan? It just the whole thing didn't make sense to me. And so I started my quest there. And my uncle, who came over one day and he's like, "You sound like a libertarian." And you have to keep in mind, this was before the internet was, I mean, we had the internet, but the internet wasn't like today.
Right.
So I started my quest and I started, looking, what is a libertarian? Is he insulting me? Like, what is this thing? And I found out that, yeah, I am a libertarian, and I've been libertarian. I had small children at the time, so I wasn't very involved in the party. I had, jobs and things to do. So I wasn't that involved with the party. In 2013, I got a divorce from my kid's dad, and all of a sudden I had a few days off a week. From being a mom 24/7 to being a mom part-time was tough. And I filled that space with libertarian activism. I wanted to help other people. I found Gary Johnson in 2016, and I was like, this is my guy. And I flew out to Albuquerque to, go to his inauguration party. I don't know, what do we call the party when you don't win, but that, his election night party.
Okay. And, wow. That's commitment. Wow.
Yeah. Before then I had attended a rally in Missouri to, let Gary debate type of thing. That was a coincidence. I just happened to be in the city. Nonetheless, libertarianism spoke to me. I was a fan of John Stossel. I was a fan of, at the time, I think it's still around, the flat tax, Neil Bortz, that was really big on flat tax. And I just kept like finding more and just falling in love with the ideology that nobody owns me. Nobody owns what I produce. As an entrepreneur, especially, I was making these huge payments to the IRS every year. But at the same time, we were struggling. We were struggling to make these payments. And the years that we had no real income, we still owed money to the IRS. And that was a real wake-up call for me. Just how is it possible? I work my tail off, and the only person who really makes money, regardless of how I do, is my silent partner, the IRS. And so, that a little over time in 2016, I found the Miami-Dade party and immediately became the vice chair, became super good friends with everybody there. And it just became, something that I love to do. I absolutely adore the friends I've made in the Libertarian Party. It's a great ideology. It's just, what's not to like? It's great.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear, because I always thought that the way that I, discovered the ideas of liberty was through Ron Paul back in his, I guess his second campaign for president, his first Republican campaign for president in 2007, 2008. And I used to tell people, yeah, Ron Paul, he's the one who woke me up to the ideas of liberty. But I think the more that I reflect on it, and I've talked with Mark Claire about this, that it's probably those ideas, that was already at my core. He just kind of, after I heard him talking about it, I'm like, oh, it's okay to think that, because you don't hear that anywhere else in the media. And I was curious from your perspective, coming, from a Cuban background, is it both your parents who?
Both my parents are Cuban. Yeah.
Are Cuban. So I'm curious about that dynamic in your upbringing. Coming from Cuba, from communism, was that something that early on sort of, it wasn't called, speaking about the ideas of liberty or principles of liberty, but was that just kind of, there growing up?
Of course, it's been ingrained in me since as far back as I can think. It's the idea that this country is amazing, but, it's more than just being Cuban, because I'm Cuban, but my really didn't talk about these things so much. It was also the fact that I spent 15 years of my life traveling back and forth between the US and Venezuela. But specifically, I spent 6 years, probably the more important years growing up from 9 to 15 in Venezuela. And that's really where I learned, the difference that America is versus other countries. So in Venezuela, you have maids and you have all these things, and people don't get the chance to move up in circles in Venezuela the way they can here in the U.S.
So what brought you to Venezuela? What were you doing there?
My dad started a company in Venezuela. He actually was one of the first people to commercially take the technology of embryo transfer and artificial insemination in cattle to Venezuela. My dad's been a farmer his whole life. Yeah. So my dad was there back when Venezuela was great. You know, he started a business there in the, I believe, early 70s. And so by the time I was born, my parents were just back and forth between Venezuela and the US. I was born in the US, but 9 days after I was born, I was taken to Venezuela. So it's been a very long and close relationship with that country. But I know Venezuela, the Venezuela from before socialism, the one that's there now. I wouldn't recognize it. I left in 1995 and never returned. And it's, you know, absolutely horrific now. I hear from people who've left much after I did, and it's absolutely horrific what happened. It's basically like Cuba, but it happened so much faster. In 20 years, they've completely devastated one of the richest countries in America, or the richest country in America.
It's really incredible. I work in oil and gas, and the company I work for used to have assets in Venezuela. And essentially, I guess it was in the 90s when it happened, is the government came in and, you know, either the employees, you know, swore allegiance to the government or they had to get out. And my company, they were nice enough to employees that didn't want to do that and wanted to, you know, emigrate to the United States. They brought them over, and a lot of Venezuelans still work for the company, which is pretty cool. But turning our attention to Cuba, because I know, I mean, you've been very involved with helping the people there on the ground in Cuba recently. Can you talk about what you've been doing and your activism there?
Sure. I want to take full credit for this, but not really. There's so much going on in Cuba right now that I think it's really important to talk about the people who are living in Cuba currently, who are using their names to speak out about their government. And the reason that this is important is because it's illegal in Cuba to do so. And there are young men and women, specifically older too, but mostly it's the young kids who are putting their names on the line, who are saying, I want to change. And so how is it
just to clarify, because I think this is important. So when you say illegal, what type of risk so if they were to get apprehended for doing that, what type of risk are they facing criminally?
Oh, we're expecting them to get apprehended at any minute. So for example, peacefully protesting, which happened throughout the island on July 11th, people were arrested. We've seen people being shot within their own homes. There are over 800 people that are missing. There are hundreds in jail. I mean, in Cuba, it's illegal to speak out against your government. It's also illegal if you're a journalist, for example, if you're a journalist that is independent, that doesn't work the state newspaper or the state TV, it's legal. It's illegal to be an artist. It's illegal to speak out. I mean, we're talking about a country that is completely repressed, right? Cuba, it's only 90 miles from our U.S. shores, but it's a world away in where they are. I equate them to North Korea, except in 2018, they finally got cell phones. And so people are starting to see the reality. They've been brainwashed for the last 62 years. And they grow up with this notion that they're the best country in the world. There's nothing better out there, which, of course, the older generation, they know that's not true. My parents' age, they were able to leave Cuba when they were younger and travel and whatnot. My mom has pictures of herself here in Miami Beach when she was a young girl. So they obviously knew the difference. But for the newer generation, they had no idea. They had no way of comparing. So you're living in Cuba and you're looking at, empty shelves. They don't even have supermarkets the way we do, but let's just assume they did. You're looking at empty shelves and you're being told this is the best. There's nobody in the world that has a better system than this. And then they get cell phones and they are able to receive pictures of what our American supermarkets look like, filled, to the brim with all your choices. You go into a supermarket in Cuba, if they have ketchup, you're going to get that one brand of ketchup, probably from the USSR, probably a little old, not great. But in America, you have your choices. You have 50 different brands of ketchup that you can buy. So I think, people started seeing the difference and they're just tired of living the way they are. So right now in Cuba, you have this entire group of young people specifically that are saying, we're done. We are fed up with the system. We don't want it anymore. They haven't had a choice in the matter. Cuba went from being a communist country to being a communist country. Like they had a dictator before, Batista, and then Fidel Castro took over. He passed away. He moved on to his brother Raul Castro, and now that Raul has given that up, it's on to Diaz-Canel. But basically, they haven't had an election. They haven't had the ability to choose. And I'm not saying to go to elections, that would be terrible. But these kids they're asking for it. They're saying, you know what, we've had enough. On July 11th, they took to the streets. They started protesting. And there's another protest coming up. They had originally said November 20th. And then the Cuban government, those kids, the ones that wrote their names on a piece of paper saying, hey, Cuban government, we are going to peacefully protest on November 20th because it's our right. And they cited in the Constitution, the Cuban Constitution, where it was their right to protest. The Cuban government has now said on November 18th, 19th, and 20th, we're going to do these exercises, these government exercises, military exercises. We're now naming November 20th this national military day, and everybody has to attend these rallies. So they're doing that in order to obviously try and overcome that November 20th march that people were doing. And now they've moved it to November 15th. So we're kind of just on this back and forth with the Cuban government. But essentially all of this is illegal. All of the things that they're doing, it's illegal. The Cuban government says, you can't have, for example, lobster. That's illegal too. So
lobster is illegal?
Yeah, on an island, which is Cuba, it's an island. You can't go fishing, and unless you're the elite, you can't eat lobster. There's like a funny joke with between Cubans about how they can't have lobster. Not so funny when you translate it, but anyways, yes, on an island, eating lobster is illegal if you aren't of the elite class. Of course, if you're
that is crazy. I had never heard that. So what ultimately, I mean, the protesting, I mean, that it is remarkable to see young people standing up, putting their name, putting themselves on the line. I mean, there's no promises that it's going to bear any fruit, but at the end of the day, in a country like Cuba, like you were kind of talking about before, like getting an election, it could just be another fraudulent election.
It would.
So how do you actually flip things so you get a new system of government in place?
Oh boy, if I knew the answer to this, I think we'd already be there. And that's the $1 million question. That's what people are asking themselves is how do we get from here to there? And, the incredible thing is what technology is giving us. Right now, pretty much every day, all day, there's Twitter Spaces going on, which is, who knew, Cubans' favorite way of communicating online because it uses the least amount of bandwidth and they're able to talk longer there. So there's all these conversations happening on Twitter Spaces where people are talking about what are we going to do? And the amazing thing for this little libertarian over here is to hear them saying they're rejecting the right, they're rejecting the left, and they're going straight, straight liberty, straight libertarian, straight whatever you want to call it. But they are going for the jugular. And I think that if they manage it, it's going to be the probably freest country that we know of, if they manage to, to do this thing. What is this thing? I don't know. They need to take over their government. There's
need to have the power. I mean, in order to grant the people liberty, they need to have the power.
And they don't have the guns, but they do have the masses. Cuba has 11 million people, and there's maybe 300,000 people in the Cuban government. So they do have the numbers. And that's, I think that's going to come into play. A lot of people are asking for the United States government to intervene. They've been asking the UN to intervene. Nothing's happened. And honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the United States is looking to get into another war, nor do I want them to. And then the UN has been completely silent. There was a hunger strike in front of the UN while they were in session. And they came out one day and accepted the paperwork for that guy doing the hunger strike. He was there for 30 plus days, lost a whole bunch of weight. They didn't even bother to come out. So my money is definitely not on the UN doing anything for Cuba. Unfortunately, they could provide peacekeeping troops. They could do some bare minimum things, and they're just not going to.
Yeah, it's got a comment here. I'll put it up on the screen. Interesting comment. So it says the younger generation putting themselves. Unfortunately, we can't see who said this because StreamYard, you have to like register in order for your name to show up. But the younger generation putting themselves on the line in Cuba should preface every interview they can get with "I will probably be arrested or killed for saying this, but the people need to hear it." That's a really good point. I mean, putting up front the risk that they're taking just for speaking out.
And it's a
I'm sure
big risk.
there's old guard, not even necessarily associated with the government in Cuba, who just want the status quo to continue. They've lived their life. They don't want to. I'm not saying everyone who's old there, but want like this. But I'm sure there is that aspect who just
There's a
let's
lot,
not
yeah.
upset things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
I mean, especially the people who live well, right? So if you're part of the
Mhm.
government, you live well. Why do you want to rock the boat? Then you actually have to like go out and work. You actually have to fend for yourself. I mean, socialism, when you're used to it and it's working for you, why bother? Why go into this system where now you have to do things for yourself? It's a scary thing. I mean, we see it in this country all the time. People don't want to take responsibility for themselves, and they just, not that they just want it handed to them, but it's a lot easier to live life when you know that you have certain things already handled for you, and you know, it's human nature. I think, unfortunately, it's human nature.
So, with your experience looking at Cuba and what's happened there and the effects of communism on a country, and you look at the United States right now with some of the most draconian measures we've ever seen being proposed with vaccine mandates and the government stepping in and telling private companies what they can do and how to run their business on an unprecedented level. Not that hasn't been going on forever to some degree with the government, obviously taxing businesses and regulating them, and but really reaching over into the core of the business and telling them, which employees that they can employ, and reaching into their medical records. What I mean, I'm not even sure what I'm asking, but from someone who has seen communism, does that just like you're like, what's your reaction to it?
I mean, as an American, forget about the communist part. As an
Mm.
American, it's really upsetting that we are forcing people to do anything. Forcing anyone to put something into their body that they don't want to do. I'm just really impressed primarily with the left, who just a few months ago, let alone a year ago, we're saying things like "my body, my choice." I shouldn't be forced to do anything. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, we were just kidding. We mean on the things that we like. On this vaccine, you totally should be, vaccinated or get it and whatnot. I know plenty of people, and I think we have at least one person in common who definitely can't get vaccinated for one reason or another, through medical reasons, or,
Mhm.
they just can't. There's reasons why you don't
Right.
want to get vaccinated. I mean, I have a 21-year-old son, and I'm constantly saying, hey, I don't think you should be vaccinated, because I know young men who have gotten a myocarditis from this. So there's a big risk. I've had personally 2 heart surgeries. And so I am totally fearful of, sorry about that, totally fearful of something happening to my heart again. So yeah, I don't think we should be forcing people to get anything they don't want. And then of course there's the history of being a Cuban and, not belonging to yourself in Cuba. If something's wrong with you medically, the doctor doesn't have to tell you first. He can actually tell your family. And oftentimes they won't tell you. So for example, in Cuba, if you have cancer of some kind, they won't tell you directly. They'll tell your family, and then your family gets to choose if they're going to tell you or not. You don't belong to you. Your children don't belong to you. So this is looking a lot like that from a Cuban's perspective. But again, just as an American, I think it's absolutely horrific that we can't make this choice for ourselves, that they want to force us to do it. And by the way, I'm not anti-vax, because I know I'm going to get labeled this. I know people are going to be, saying something along those lines. Personally, my children are completely vaccinated except for this one. I've been vaccinated with all my things, I'm not anti-vax.
Mhm.
I just don't agree with the United States government forcing businesses to choose, that telling them they have to fire people.
Yeah,
for.
I'm not anti-vax either, but it's interesting that they've changed the definition of being anti-vax from being against vaccines to being against vaccines that are mandated by the government. They changed that. They keep changing the definitions of words. And even with this vaccine, I think probably it makes sense for certain demographics to get the vaccine. If you're over 65. You should probably get the vaccine. You're weighing your risk.
Yeah.
COVID is real. People do get it. People do die. But generally, if you're young and healthy, it's very low risk that you're going to get a bad COVID outcome. So,
Right.
yeah.
COVID is definitely real. It's
Mhm.
ravaging Cuba as we speak, which is the reason for the charity that I put together, People for Cuba, was just that. COVID is absolutely real. I'm not denying COVID is a thing and it's killing people. And especially if you are, if you're unfortunately overweight or if you have comorbidities, it's really bad for you. If that is your circumstance, I'm the first person telling you, I think you should probably get a vaccine. You should probably go do it. My own mother, she's elderly. She lives here in my house. We all had COVID. She thankfully didn't get it. And then she got the vaccine. I encouraged her to do so. I think that for some people, it makes absolute sense. It's just, again, the younger kids, people who really, it hasn't been studied. Again, my own children, until we know 10 years from now what it does, I really wouldn't want them to get it.
Yeah.
It's my job to be their mom above all else. And if I don't know without a shadow of a doubt that something is good for them, I'm not going to encourage them to get it.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the recent interview with Joe Rogan and Sanjay Gupta, which I'm still
did.
not all the way through it yet, but yeah, Rogan just tore him apart.
He did. I love Rogan.
It was a cordial interview, but especially I really liked Rogan's point when they were talking about vaccinating kids, and Rogan's pointed out that the way that Sanjay Gupta feels safe because he's vaccinated. This is the way I feel with my daughter. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I don't feel any angst or that she's going to get COVID and get very sick. I just don't see that. I don't see that being a thing. So close to zero. I mean, the probability of her having a bad outcome is so close to zero that it's just not worth worrying about. If you're going to worry about that, you got to open up to worry about every other very remote possibility, worst case scenario that could happen, and then you turn into a crazy parent who's worrying about everything.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm a crazy parent already, but yes, I agree. All 4 of my kids have gotten it, so I've been there, and they got it before the vaccine was available to people of their age. I mean, it's only been available for a few months now, maybe 2-3 months. We got it early at the beginning of the year before it was even available to people my age. So we didn't have a choice in the matter, and we got it, and we all made it out okay. As a matter of fact, my younger kids, you could barely even tell. I mean, they had no symptoms really. It lasted like a day for them. So I was a little worse for the wear than them. But yeah, I think that I feel the way that Joe Rogan does about his kids. My kids already got it. If they get it again, I'm pretty sure they'll make through. I have a hard time making that decision for them when I don't see a need.
Yeah, 100%. So the charity you set up, People for Cuba. Yes. Tell us about that, how it works, how people can help.
Well, so that was with the help of People for Liberty. They've been amazing to me. It's the organization that Dr. Jorgensen is currently the president of, which is also an honor for me. I worked on Dr. Jorgensen's campaign, and to now be able to work with her in this, I think is pretty awesome. What we're doing is we set up a way to get medication from here in the U.S. to people directly into their hands in Cuba. We're using any means that's legal, all means that are legal to get things there. However, some medications that we're sending, it's a little questionable whether it's legal for us to send them. Antibiotics, you need a prescription in the United States. So we're especially sending antibiotics to Cuba because it's really what's needed. Again, COVID is very, very, very real. I've never denied that to be the case. And especially with Cuba, we have so many people that are facing consequences, pneumonia and things like that in Cuba. But then you think about people that forget COVID for a minute, people that just have every other, any other type of ailment, they haven't been able to get any medications either. There's a complete collapse of the medical system in Cuba. A few months ago, they had the complete collapse of their facilities that could make oxygen for their hospitals. So they have hospitals with no oxygen. Wow. Doctors really don't want to work because they don't have protective gear. They, there's really not a whole lot of food left in Cuba. People are really struggling. They're going through a massive inflation. Antibiotics in Cuba currently cost about $300 for a round of treatment. People in Cuba make $40 a month. So it's pretty much their entire year's salary if they need it. And, there wasn't much we could do at the beginning other than retweet SOS Cuba and, all eyes on Cuba. And I became increasingly frustrated. And I was like, there has to be something we can do. And I've gotten together with a group of people here in Miami. The guys at Proactivo Miami have been amazing. They're working with, so the movement started a little before the July 11th date, but that was with just artists, street artists in Cuba. There were El Movimiento San Isidro, which was this really cool group of artists that got together. And so Proactivo was part of that group. And, we've just been collecting medicine and sending it to Cuba. And we've been collecting money as well. We have a website. It's peopleforcuba.com, the number 4 instead of FOR.
Is it just medicine, or is it like vitamins and things like that too, or
vitamins and supplements as well? I just see the bigger need for general first aid. Vitamins, of course, are super important as well, but there's such a need. I mean, it's just, we can only send so much at a time. And we've been using airlines that are going to Cuba, and they've keep limiting our ability to send stuff over. So I'm very frustrated because we had all this stuff to send, and then our price just keeps increasing. Iberia Airlines, which is who we were using for a while, we were originally started off with, they allowed 10 bags of 70 pounds each. So that was 700 pounds of medicine. We're like, yes, we're sending 700 pounds of medicine straight into Cuba. And then they cut our bags down to 5. And now they've cut it down from 70 pounds to 50 pounds. So we're still spending that crazy amount of money to get things into Cuba and to get people through quarantine in Cuba before they can hand out the medicine. But our price just keeps, skyrocketing on this. So yes, we need everything. But primarily my big focus is on the prescription drugs that people absolutely need. We just found out this week that there may be a way for us to get some containers in through the Baptist Church in Cuba and here in the US. So we're super excited about that. And we're looking to fill up containers. And in that, we can actually send food, and we can send, heavier things. So right now we're working pretty much every angle we can. But to me, the biggest push is the prescription medications, because honestly, Cubans are dying, and they're dying from things that we could save them from. They're dying from just, things that, antibiotics are so common here in the US. They're pretty much free here. And it's just sad to see a country on its knees the way Cuba is, and that its government doesn't care.
Hey, we're going to take a real quick break here, guys. I want to tell you guys about an awesome new community, a new app, a new way to build your network, to meet new people, new like-minded people, and grow your business. If you heard Monday's episode, you heard Jason Stapleton and Dave Smith, and you heard Jason talking about his new Nomad Network, and it's really cool. 2 ways to join. You can join for free, or there is a paid account. And I'll tell you what, you guys know that I'm someone who is very passionate about diversifying your income. If you're locked into a corporate job, you're just waiting to have the door slammed on your toe. So diversifying your income, and as Jason talks about, building some skills, building some unique skills that you can market and you can sell. So what the Nomad Network is, and whether you have an existing business or you're looking to start one, or if you simply want to get around and start talking to some like-minded people, the Nomad Network is definitely the place for you. And it's free to join. You can go to www. Now, I say that because for this link to work, you have to put in the www.nomadnetwork.app/Lions. So right now you can do that. You can see what everyone's talking about. Free to get in there. If you want to upgrade to a paid membership and get other perks, get into the inner circle, you can do that as well if you'd like to. You don't have to. And just to tell you a little bit more about this network, it's really cool. There's actually a job posting board where you can go in and see different things that other entrepreneurs, other like-minded people are looking for. Maybe someone to build a website, looking for someone to do some Facebook ads. I'm actually linking up with someone that I might be doing that for them. I used to do Facebook ads. I'm looking to get back into it just to make some more income in that area. Maybe doing graphics, maybe programming, all kinds of different things. This is a growing community, and guys, this is going to be huge. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be big. So go to www.nomadnetwork.app/lions and get your free account today. So does the Cuban government, do they try to stop this with bringing medicine into Cuba, or are you having to go around them, or are they allowing it? How does that work?
No. So the Cuban government, a few months back after the protests, actually, this came out immediately after the protests, they removed the taxes and the prohibitions on bringing in medication. Before you'd bring in medication and they'd charge you this huge tax. They removed that and they said until December 31st. But then at the same time, they haven't given any landing permits to planes. So there are tons of people here in the US that have said, hey, we want to land our plane filled with medication in Cuba, and they won't give landing permits. So they say one thing, but then when, push comes to shove, they don't actually do the things that they were doing. So actively they are blocking, although they're saying that they aren't. It's, again, it's a dictatorship. People don't understand what it's like dealing with a dictatorship. People said that they were going to go out and protest, and they started a military trial on that same day. They planned one. The phone company said that they would be down on November 20th as well. Now they're going to be down on November 15th. So, it's very difficult to explain to Americans that are used to AT&T. And, you have many companies. So if AT&T says that they're going to do regular maintenance on such and such date, well, you can always go over to Sprint or, whatever the case may be. I'm not here to promote anybody's business, but, you have options. But in Cuba, there's one telecommunication company and it belongs to the state. So you're stuck. It's not like you can go to CVS and buy medicine. You're stuck. If the government won't provide it for you, where do you get it from?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate centralized power, and that's all they care about is maintaining power. They'll let their people starve. It's the same thing you see in North Korea. It's disgusting. It's incredible this day and age that this still happens. I think we're reaching a point, kind of as you talked about at the beginning, with Twitter and communications and with cryptocurrency, that we might just get to a point that people can just live sort of around these governments. Maybe these governments will still think they have control, but they won't. They won't control much of anything, which I think that's the ultimate path out of this, even in the United States. One day we're just going to realize, why are we still voting for people? They don't do anything at all. It's
the libertarian dream. I mean, why not? I agree. I think that at some point we're just going to be like, we don't need you. I mean, we've seen people fixing roads without the government. What's their excuse?
Exactly.
We don't really need them. And that's my big push for Cuba, is to get crypto. They're already using it, but it's a very small percentage. It's about 1 to 2% of Cubans actually even know about crypto or have access to it. It's my goal to see that number increased by a lot, by 100% if possible. I mean, 100% of the island, not by 100%, which would be 4%. I want to see everybody on crypto in Cuba, because the Cuban government controls everything, and everything that we send from here to Cuba somehow benefits the Cuban government one way or the other. So it would be great to see, Cubans being able to choose what currency to use, to not have to choose the Cuban government's currency, to be able to make these decisions for themselves and be free. Ultimately, I think what we all want is just freedom. And some places freedom is harder to come by. But as somebody who's been around for a while, the United States is getting increasingly authoritarian, and not in a good way. I don't think there's any good authoritarian, but definitely not.
Well, I mean, there could be an authoritarian who was, you could have a king who was basically just said, do whatever you want. There's no taxes, but it's probably not going to happen. Maybe it will. I don't know.
I
would vote for that king if he was running for,
I don't know,
kingship.
I don't know that I would, though. I kind of don't want anyone ruling over me,
Well, ultimately,
no matter how wonderful they are.
ultimately, we're as human beings, there's always going to be a power structure. People say, or libertarians say, we need to get rid of the government. We need to get the government out of our lives. The U.S. government could fold tomorrow. The currency could crash, and the problem is still 90% or 95% of the population wants that government. So until the majority of the people want to live on their own, want to thrive on their own, want to create their own businesses, create their own wealth, there's just going to be another government formed. So it's more than anything. It's education, and it's changing people's hearts and minds. And also, I think importantly, going back to your bio and what you've done in your past, we've been talking about your political activism, but I think as important, or maybe more important, is your background as an entrepreneur and building businesses and being involved in real estate. So I'm curious to get your perspective on that, on entrepreneurship. Do you think libertarians need to be more entrepreneurial?
I think we already are. I mean, everybody should be more entrepreneurial. The real way to make wealth for yourself is to not have a 9-to-5 job. When you own a business, especially if it's an online business or something that creates money while you're not really, doing the thing, that's the best way to make it in this world. I mean, look at Jeff Bezos, right? And I'm obviously nowhere near Jeff Bezos, but that's the way to go. If you build something, you create something of value, to me, that's the quickest, easiest way to independent wealth. So yes, I think every libertarian that has that inclination should definitely go down that path. It's a hard road. And, I'm on this side of it. Like I started some things and they worked out really well. Not everything I did, especially the first few, were great. There were some real terrible ones. I lost a lot of money along the way. But I think that it's great. And owning property, it's again, the quickest way, whether you start a business or you own something, there's no better way to make money and have that wealth created and there for you in your time of need. Right now we see massive inflation in the United. Okay, maybe not massive, especially not compared to Venezuela, but we see inflation. We see a 5% inflation, in a few months. That's something that the United States really hasn't gone through. In Venezuela, we have massive, massive inflation, oftentimes over 100% month to month, 50% month to month. I mean, it's these crazy numbers. And so when you own something like a business or like real estate, it's a lot easier to weather those storms. If you make money, if you have a 9-to-5, and then your money gets devalued, it's really hard to be able to pay your bills and to be able to live, especially when your paycheck doesn't go up. So absolutely, anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur should go down that path, but buyer beware. It's a hard path to go as well. I mean, I think a lot of people see it as like this rosy thing that's always wonderful, and it sucks. And sometimes it really sucks, especially when you have to fire people, when you lose money and your business is having a hard time. You may lose it all. It's a great thing, but just, it's a great thing, but with a little caveat there of you're going to probably not sleep for a while.
Yeah, it's not easy, and I've had businesses fail as well. Probably the worst business I've had, which I did learn a lot from it. So I mean, you always learn things. I learned Facebook marketing, and it encouraged me to try other businesses. But one that I founded, this was back when Trump was running, right when he started running. So Make America Great Again. So I got the trademark for Make Liberty Great Again. I was like, this is going to be easy. I'll just make Liberty Great Again merchandise and hats and set up a store. I'll make a ton of money. Not easy. Republicans didn't want to buy it because they just wanted to buy Trump stuff. Libertarians didn't want to buy it because it sounded like Trump. I'm like, well, this didn't work out at all. I had this great idea and it blew up in my face. But
it may work. It still may work.
I might work.
Make Liberty Great Again is a thing that's like popular now.
Yeah.
You were just too ahead of your time.
Maybe I'll try it again. Open the store back up. But
Yeah, you were just ahead of your time. Why not? I think now's when liberty is cool. And I don't know about you, but I really do think that the tide is starting to really shift in our favor. All of a sudden, everybody's a libertarian.
I agree. Well, I think people around certain policies. I think we have a great opportunity now to build coalitions with like-minded people against the, as Dave Smith says, against the COVID regime, against those who, favor the lockdowns and the masking of school children and mandatory vaccines. There's a lot of people, not many on the left. Most of the left are in favor of all that stuff, which is disgusting. But many people who, maybe they are Trump supporters, or maybe they're, typical conservatives, or people that we can ally ourselves with. I think that the COVID regime, I think, is the biggest threat to our individual liberty, especially if they get in a vaccine passport, a pharmaceutical tracking system, a biomedical tracking system in place. That's going to be a nightmare. It's going to change our lives forever. So I think, I think that's good. But you kind of look at what happened, not to, go all over the place here, but look at Afghanistan. I mean, there's those same people we might ally ourselves with against the COVID regime might think who are on the right might think we should still be in Afghanistan. So it's kind of muddy waters with some of that stuff.
It is, absolutely. I mean, imagine thinking that we should still be invading another country. And you're right, those people are probably anti all of this stuff, but then we have to align ourselves with either the people who still want to be in wars that we shouldn't be in, or we should be aligning ourselves with people who think that it's okay to mask our 2-year-olds, I think it's time for a lot of people to kind of realize that, I don't know about you. When I was a child and I was told stories of Hitler and how people ended up in concentration camps, I was like, man, it's so good that we've evolved and we no longer are those type of people. And then COVID happened. And I'm like, so this is how it happened. Oh my God, I see it now.
Yeah.
I
Crazy.
totally see these people that are obviously during COVID, we're calling them Karens, but yeah, there's a lot of.
I've had people on Twitter tell me they want me to die. It's like, whoa, this is a bit much.
Yeah,
a bit much here.
Because you won't get a vaccine, you should die. I care so much about you that I want you to get the vaccine. But if you don't get the vaccine, you should die. Like, how does that even make sense? But yeah, I think that people have forgotten the humanity, behind all of this. The whole reason that we're fighting for liberty, or we're the greatest country. Maybe we were never the greatest, but one of. I think I have to take that back. We were the greatest country. We still are. We still can be. We've had our rough spots, especially with slavery and a few other issues, but we've been pretty good until now. And these people that really want to take our freedoms, it's frustrating because they don't mind taking freedoms away while their guy is in power. But then the other guy takes over, and then those same things are terrible. I was just looking at tweets from, just over a year ago, and it was the vaccines were evil if you were on the left. And now the left is like, take your vaccine, don't be selfish, go take your vaccine. So it's funny how we have these shifts, and it's not about the principles, and it's not about your beliefs, and it's not about freedom. It's about the person in power and what they're telling you. And that to me is just, how did we get here?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
A lot of people get their left and right, get their opinions assigned by the corporate media. And, like you just said, you had people on the left who just a year ago were saying, I'm not taking Trump's rushed vaccine. I'll never take that. You had Kamala Harris, the vice, before she was vice president, saying, well, I'm not going to take it if it's Donald Trump's vaccine. Even Joe Biden was vaccine hesitant before he won the election. So it's just so crazy how it just flipped. And then he won the election and it flipped the next day.
And all of a sudden it's not Trump's vaccine anymore. Yeah. It's, this thing. And I mean, we were joking about it, but the horse medicine that Joe Rogan took, I mean, it's insane. Joe Rogan sold his podcast for $100 million. He has the top doctors, the top everything, and CNN saying he's taking a horse pill. no CNN. I assure you, he has the money to pay for the human version of ivermectin, which has been sold throughout the world, millions of doses, and is probably the reason why a lot of countries in Africa and several parts of India have not had the COVID outbreak that the rest of the world has had. They've been on, somebody's saying billions. Yeah, billions. Billions of doses of ivermectin have been sold and used in humans. And it's incredible how, when it was Trump, it was like, oh, he's taking bleach. And now it's, this horse medicine. We've politicized everything so much to the point where here we are stuck at home, and people are getting fired over whether they decided to take a vaccine or not. And I find it funny if it wasn't so sad. On the same subject, the airline pilots that that forced Southwest to cancel all these flights. My husband's a pilot. This is something that's super near and dear to me. He doesn't want to get fired for not having a vaccine, and he flies for one of the only companies that isn't forcing it yet. And I've had people tell me that they should fire all of those pilots and bring in new people. And I'm wondering, do people not understand what it takes to be a pilot? And also, I kind of want my pilot.
Do you want the people flying your plane who didn't get hired in the first place and only got the job because the other people wouldn't take a vaccine? Is that really who you want flying your plane?
I mean, do you really want the guy that doesn't have enough flight hours to be a commercial pilot to now be a commercial pilot because the other guy didn't want to take a vaccine? Like, you know what? They're up in the cockpit. The door is closed. You don't have to deal with them at all. As a matter of fact, how often do you even see your pilot? I fly all the time. I look in to see if, to see who it is and make sure that they look competent. I don't know what I'm looking for. All I'm saying is I look
Make
for
sure
them.
There's not a beer can like falling out and like, okay, it looks all right. Yeah.
But yeah, you want the most competent person flying your plane. Who are these people that are like saying our pilot shouldn't be flying? I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild times. So talked about your entrepreneurial background, talked about your activism. You're also running for office, right?
Yes, I am running for office.
So how are you juggling that as well? And tell us about that campaign.
The truth or the glossed over version of everything's wonderful. Please vote.
Only the truth on this podcast. That's all.
It's tough work. I have a year to go. So I have not even gotten into the toughest parts, but it's a rough go in a city like mine where most people who run. So I'm running for a commissioner of Miami-Dade County. It's the 7th largest county in the United States, and we have an annual budget of over $9 billion. The reason I mentioned this is because obviously there's going to be a lot of people that would like to handle that budget. I would be one of 13, by the way. So I would not alone be handling a $9 billion budget. But that's the reason why people really want this seat. And this seat pays $6,000 a year. Not $60,000, $6,000. But people raise $500,000 to $1 million for this seat. And so it's
why do they even pay $6,000? Like what's the reason for that? Just is that like transportation to get to the meetings? Like
I'm not. They also provide money for transportation. They provide a cell phone. There's some like perks, but it all doesn't add up to it's a full-time job and it doesn't add up to it.
Right.
I am going to be taking a severe pay cut because I won't, and I know everybody talks about it and it's another politician saying, oh yeah, I'm different than the rest, but I've been an activist for a lot longer than I've been a politician. And I used to go and speak before these commissioners and pretty much beg them not to do the things that they're doing. And obviously nobody took me seriously. So I decided then and there I would run. And the reason I'm running and taking this paycheck loss, this pay loss, was because I want to see things differently right now. And I know this isn't going to air live, so bear with me, guys. Right now, we have the chief of police of the city of Miami, which is different than county, but still relative same area, being fired because he called the commissioners and, the police department, pretty much the Cuban mafia. He's not necessarily wrong. Our commissioners, the one whose seat I hope to replace, he's been in office since 1993, and they just keep getting reelected to different positions and back and forth. I mean, there's a lot of cronyism in this city. And so why am I running? Because I want to see something different, but it's really a lot of work. Republicans and Democrats have an entire machine. And, as libertarians, we talk a lot about, vote third party. And the reality now that I'm in this is they have these machines in place, which means that they automatically, the person who's running against me, we don't need to talk about him. I'm sure he's a lovely person, but I don't need to talk about him at all. The day he announced, or the month he announced, immediately got $250,000 worth of donations. And that came from the Republican machine. And I know this because the Republicans had reached out to me first and asked if I would run as a Republican. They would give me $250,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And I turned them down because I asked them if I could talk about my issues, if I could talk about cannabis, particularly that's my, drug legalization, but particularly cannabis. Mm-hmm. And they said, absolutely not. So I turned him down, and
that's ridiculous.
He filed to run, and within that same month, he got donations of $250,000. So they have this machine in place. We libertarians, we don't have that. We don't have that for our presidential candidates. We don't have that for our, upper level governors. We don't have that for state reps, for senators. We don't have that machine in place. And so when it trickles down to somebody like me running for county commission, it's not there. And we don't really have the support. We don't have people to go out and door knock. We don't have people. Mm-hmm. We don't even have a campaign in a box, which is something I've been saying quite a bit. We need to have. We need so that people can just have a website, have their domain name purchased, have, the basics, have a campaign plan. We are seriously lacking in all of these things. And that's the reason why, realistically, libertarians, we don't make it to office. It's because of that lacking of infrastructure. And that's really what I hope to see libertarians rally against. We do need people to run for office, of course, but we really have a need for these things. I've seen the Mises Caucus doing some amazing work, and the Mises Caucus here in Florida is amazing. I mean, some real great guys. And I'm hoping that their push is in that direction, is to help grow the party in that direction, in the machinery. It seems that they have it, down to a science. To me, they're collecting money every month. They're doing concerted efforts around the country. We need that. We really need that in the Libertarian Party. Instead of being this club of, you're not libertarian enough. You know what? Does it even matter? At the end of the day, we don't hold office. What does it matter if we get along, or if we agree, or if you're more libertarian than I am, or I'm more libertarian than you? It doesn't matter. And until we start winning, and until we have an infrastructure, I don't see why we're fighting. I really don't. And it's stupid and it's silly. And I don't know why we kind of want to hurt ourselves.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I mean, if we're not running to win, why are we running? And I think, you're running for a position that I think libertarians should be targeting, a local influence in your community where you can wield some power and actually change the landscape for people. And also, you have a background where you have the credibility. I think far too often we have, and I'm not looking to criticize all libertarians who run for office here. I think there's some great libertarians out there who are doing good things. But I think the former chair had this thing where we want to run as many libertarians as possible. Let's get as many libertarians on the ballot as possible. Personally, I think that's stupid. If you're not running with a possibility of winning and a plan to win, I think you're wasting your time. I think you're wasting people's money. And as libertarians, we don't have much money or time. We don't have the resources. We can't staff campaigns. I think we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. And we're running people in these races, spreading ourselves out. And you get people running who just aren't qualified. And it makes us look like a joke when you put them next to a very qualified person. Sure, that qualified Republican or Democrat, we might have nothing in common with them, and their policy is terrible. But when an average voter looks at them, we look like a joke. And that's just the way it is. Someone like yourself.
No fault of our own. I mean, for the candidate, the party itself could help us. We could have, cards and just things, resources at our fingertips that we don't. And I went to the Libertarian Party candidate training, and it was very wonderful information. You leave there and you don't have the things, the cards, you have to do it all yourself. And what comes first? Do you raise a whole bunch of money? Do you get a campaign manager? Like, you can't hire a campaign manager if you don't have money. You can't fundraise until you have a campaign that looks like it could possibly win. We're setting ourselves up for failure. And I agree with you. If you haven't accomplished something in your life, if you, don't have a bank account that you can run and not work for however long until your campaign is over, probably running isn't the thing for you. And I have to say, it's tough. It really is tough to sustain yourself during, a run. And I started in February, and it's been a long time, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Thankfully, I do have social media. My social media has been growing by leaps and bounds, and that is primarily where I am targeting people. I'm also doing the things offline that I think need to happen, but not enough. And again, door knocking is a big thing. I don't have a door knocking crew yet. There's just so much to do. You have to learn about the seat you're running for. You have to know your issues. You have to then be able to talk to people, do a lot of interviews. There's just so much that one person alone can't do it. So I agree with you. Running candidates for the sake of running them, it's not good. And we run for big seats. We really do. We run for state senate, and, we run for things that we have no business running for unless we've run for other seats. I'm already elected to an office, a very small one, but I do have the title of honorable. They're the only people that call me honorable. But I ran for a seat that really I didn't even have to run for. Nobody since the early 90s had ever run for it. It was just always appointed because nobody ran for it. And I did. And I obviously won it as the only person who ran for it. But that has given me, I am now the chair.
I think doing that is smart. And that's in Pennsylvania. Our Libertarian Party is very good at finding those seats and running for them and winning. And I think that's smart because you're not putting a lot of resources into it. It builds your resume. I think I just wanted to put that. I'm not talking out against, not saying you should only run for offices where you can, wield power and change things. I think it's good to have that on your resume, of course.
But it's great. Run for dog catcher if you have to. And then you have some credential. I've already been in government. I already know how to do these things. I know how to run meetings. I am currently the chair of this board. I started off in a seat, like I said, I barely had to run for it. And now 3 years into it, I'm the chair. And I hope that this gives people confidence to then be able to vote for me in a bigger office. So I won't take people's idea of don't run, absolutely run, but find those lower seats, work your way up, because it starts building your name recognition, and it starts helping the people see you, doing these jobs and see that they can vote for a libertarian and the world won't fall. The sky won't fall because I'm chairing the meeting. I think it's important.
No, that's a great point. People need to see libertarians, active in politics, and not just as some, sideshow third party that, just kind of just blocked out of things. So 100% agree with that. Martha, this has been an awesome interview. I feel like we've talked about so many different things. When I go back to it, it'll be like, oh, wow, I forgot we talked about that. But so before I let you go, I need you to plug everything, your political campaign, your charities, your activism, and I'll put everything on the show notes page so people can find all of it.
Thank you so much. So my campaign website is not quite up yet. It will be there. It's just going to be marthabueno.com. I've been saying that for a while, and it's still not perfect, but it will be, and it will be up soon. You can find me on all social media as Bueno for Miami. For those that don't speak Spanish or very little, Bueno means good in Spanish. And so I'm using the double entendre there. So Bueno for Miami is my hashtag. It's where I am everywhere on social media. And then you
do have a good name for a politician. I'll tell you that.
No, right? I can't believe I changed my name when I got married. I changed it back, thankfully. And then for the charity, which is really the most important thing to me, I'm running, and that's important, but saving people's lives is way more important. And you can find that up at people4Cuba.com. We've been getting out a shipment once every 2 weeks. We're hoping to do way more often and way more, much more quantities. And I'm also going to set up a rally for the 15th of November here in Miami. And I encourage anybody who wants to see freedom in Cuba and around the world, to set up a protest for the 15th of November in your own part of the world. Why? Because I want the world's eyes to be on a place like Cuba. They want their freedom. They are begging for their freedom. They're fighting for their freedom, and they can't get it because no government, nobody wants to help them, and they don't know how to help themselves. So, the little bit that we can do, either send them medicine, send them food, and or pay attention to them. Let the world know what they're doing so that they do have our backs, and so that they do know that people care outside of Cuba. So 15th of November here in Miami, I think we're going to end up doing it at the Mexican consulate, because Mexico all of a sudden has decided that Venezuela and Cuba are great places and that they're going to be like them. Socialism is moving through Latin America. Mexico is embracing it. So the Mexican consulate is where I'm aiming to do our protest. But anyone, everywhere, go for it. The 15th of November.
Awesome. Any your businesses you want to plug or anything else?
Nope. I am semi-retired. I'm back into a new business. I'll be launching soon enough, doing hemp now. Awesome. But yeah, we're not there yet. So thank you, but nope.
All right. Fantastic. Martha, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.